The chamber reeked of blood and burning metal, the acrid scent thick in the air. High above, the crowd of Zerkai nobles and warriors pressed forward in their hovering seats, anticipation crackling between them like static energy. 1,000 glowing eyes bored down upon the small, fragile figure being dragged onto the killing sands. The girl, no older than 8, barely reached the waist of the armored guards escorting her. Her bare feet left faint tracks in the dust, marking her final steps before death. Elara did not scream. The towering gates of the arena groaned as they sealed behind her, cutting off the view of the dark corridors she had been marched through. The only path left was forward, toward the monstrous shape lurking behind the second set of reinforced doors at the far end of the pit. The ground trembled slightly as something massive stirred on the other side. High above, seated upon a throne of carved obsidian, Emperor Carvos observed the scene with mild disinterest. His crimson ceremonial robes draped over his broad shoulders, their embroidered glyphs whispering of 1,000 conquered worlds. He leaned slightly, one clawed hand stroking his chin. A human child, he mused aloud, his voice a low, guttural rumble that reverberated through the amphitheater. Barely worth the effort. The gathered nobles laughed. Some had wagered on how quickly the spectacle would end. 1 bite, maybe 2. None had placed their credits on the child surviving longer than a few seconds. A disembodied voice, cold and mechanical, echoed across the arena. By decree of the Zerkai Dominion, this human, Prisoner 0118, has been deemed unworthy of servitude. Let her life be given to the beast. The secondary gates slid open, a deep metallic clang announcing the arrival of death. From the shadows, the albino Cherokee wolf emerged. It was a towering mass of engineered muscle and lethal precision, its pale fur streaked with faint silver veins where dermal plating had been fused with organic flesh. Its eyes, a molten shade of amber, locked onto the girl with an almost lazy curiosity. The crowd held its breath as the beast sniffed the air, inhaling her scent, tasting her terror. Elara stood perfectly still. She did not cry. She did not beg. Instead, she tilted her chin upward, locking eyes with the predator. The wolf's ears twitched. It prowled forward, each step deliberate, claws scoring the sand. A hush fell over the coliseum. This was the moment of execution. And yet, something shifted. The beast hesitated. It was brief, so quick most would not have noticed. But the emperor did. The nobles, the warriors, even the handlers who had raised the Cherokee wolf from birth noticed. Instead of lunging, the creature's muscles coiled in restraint. A flicker of confusion crossed its predator's gaze. Elara exhaled slowly, her small hands curling into fists at her sides. The wolf flinched. The realization came too late. The nobles barely had time to react before the impossible unfolded before their eyes. The girl took a step forward, not away, but toward the predator. The beast growled low in its throat, a sound that should have been a warning. But beneath it, there was something else, something almost uncertain. The emperor leaned forward in his throne. "What is she doing?" The crowd murmured, confusion rippling through them. This was not how prey acted. The handlers had starved the beast for days, ensuring it would tear the child apart in a heartbeat. And yet, it remained still, nostrils flaring, head lowering slightly, not in attack, but in something dangerously close to submission. Elara raised one hand. The crowd gasped as the beast shrank away. It was imperceptible at first, a twitch of muscle, a subtle shift in posture. But then the great wolf lowered its head further, its snarls ceasing altogether. Its molten eyes flickered, uncertain, as though an unseen force had wrapped around its mind, pulling it under. The silence in the coliseum stretched unbearably long. The emperor rose to his feet, the realization dawning upon him like a creeping storm. The girl wasn't prey. She was in control. Impossible, someone whispered. The Emperor's voice cut through the growing unease. Kill them. The handlers hesitated. I said kill them. Blades ignited, weapons raised, and within seconds, the killing order was given. Energy rifles charged, targeting the girl and the wolf as the coliseum erupted into chaos. Elara barely moved. A flick of her fingers. A thought, sharp, precise. The Cherokee wolf responded instantly. It was a blur of pale death, moving faster than the eye could track. Clawed limbs struck with unnatural speed, ripping through the first wave of guards before they could fire. Screams echoed across the arena. Blood misted the air. Elara remained in the center of it all, untouched. Another handler fell, his throat crushed between the wolf's teeth. Then another, and another. The nobles scrambled, realizing too late that their entertainment had become their nightmare. The Emperor clenched his jaw, fists curling at his sides. The girl had been thrown into the pit to die, and instead, she had become something far worse, an anomaly, a creature beyond their control. She turned then, her gaze lifting to meet his own. The weight of it struck him harder than he cared to admit. There was no fear in her eyes, no despair, only cold, sharp understanding. For the first time in decades, Emperor Carvos felt the whisper of something alien and unwelcome coil in his gut. It was fear, and Elara smiled. The arena had become a slaughterhouse. Guards, once confident in their dominion over the spectacle, now lay torn apart in the sand. Limbs and weapons were scattered in the crimson-streaked dust, their owners reduced to broken husks. The Cherokee wolf, Varric, stood over the bodies like a pale wraith, its fangs bared, nostrils flaring. Elara's small figure remained at the center of the chaos, untouched. Above, the nobles had turned frantic, their voices clashing in a cacophony of disbelief and fear. This was not how it was supposed to go. The child was nothing, a discarded remnant of a broken world. She was not meant to survive, let alone dominate one of their engineered apex predators. A sharp command split the commotion. Deploy the sentinels. The Emperor's voice, like a blade, cut through the panic. Carvos stood tall on his obsidian throne, his expression an unreadable mask of calculation. He was no fool. If the girl could control one beast, then she was a threat unlike anything the Empire had encountered. And threats were eliminated. Across the arena walls, hatches slid open, revealing the towering forms of the Sentinels, elite war machines designed for execution and battlefield supremacy. Their crimson optics flared to life, scanning the girl and the beast with cold precision. The nobles fell silent, their fear replaced by dark anticipation. The Sentinels had never failed. A metallic voice rang out from the machines. Target acquired. Engaging extermination protocol. The first shot came without hesitation. A pulse of searing blue plasma cut through the air, striking the ground where Elara had been a split second before. Sand and molten rock exploded outward. She moved before thought, instinct sharper than any child should be. Her body twisted, rolling beneath another blast as heat singed the tips of her hair. Varric leaped. The wolf was a blur of pale fury, its enhanced limbs carrying it across the battlefield with terrifying speed. It slammed into the first sentinel, claws screeching against reinforced alloy plating. The war machine staggered, its servos whining in protest as it tried to bring its weapons to bear. Elara didn't waste time. She darted between the monolithic machines, her mind working in tandem with the wolf's movements. The world slowed. She could feel the pulse of the sentinels, their mechanical rhythms, the way their targeting systems recalibrated with each of her movements. She reached out, not with her hands, but with something deeper, something alien. The sentinel's optics flickered. For a fraction of a second, hesitation rippled through the machine's programming. Not enough to disable it, but enough to disrupt its aim. The plasma blast meant for her went wide, carving a molten trench in the ground. Karvos saw it. He gritted his teeth. This was beyond human instinct. This was control. Elara turned, her gaze locking onto another machine. She could feel its processes stuttering, resisting, yet unable to break free from the pressure of her mind. It was different from controlling a beast. The Sentinels had no thoughts, no emotions, only lines of code. But even machines could be bent if one knew where to push. The Sentinel convulsed, its joints seizing. Then, in a single terrifying moment, it pivoted on its own soldiers. A plasma cannon discharged. The explosion sent debris hurtling through the stands, shattering the nobles' protective barriers. Screams erupted as the once untouchable elites scrambled for safety. The machine had fired on its own forces. The shift was undeniable. A human child had turned the Empire's greatest weapons against them. The fear Karvos had first felt was now a living thing, clawing at the edges of his composure. He had ruled through strength, through the unshakable belief that the Zerkai were superior, that no lesser species could challenge them. But this child, this thing, was rewriting the rules before his eyes. His fist slammed down on his throne's control panel. Unleash the Warborn. The words sent a ripple of silence through the coliseum. Even the retreating nobles froze. Every Zerkai warrior knew what it meant. The air shifted, thick with something unseen yet oppressive. From beneath the arena, an ancient mechanism roared to life, deep tremors shaking the ground as hidden vaults unlocked. The sand itself trembled. Elara stilled. She could feel it before she saw it. From the depths of the arena's subterranean levels, something enormous began to rise. Black armor gleamed under the artificial sun, curved plates etched with glyphs that pulsed with energy. The Warborn, the Emperor's personal executioner, was no mere soldier. It was a legend, a living weapon crafted over centuries, a hybrid of Zerkai, genetic supremacy, and cybernetic augmentation. And it was looking directly at her. The Warborn's voice was a guttural snarl, deep, ancient, hungry. Come, little thing. The crowd held its breath. This was not a mindless machine. This was not a beast to be tamed. It was a nightmare given form, a creature bred to be the end of anything in its path. Elara's fingers twitched at her sides. For the first time since stepping into the arena, she felt something she had not expected. Doubt. Her abilities worked on creatures with instincts, on machines with patterns. But this thing, this abomination, was something else entirely. It stood outside the natural order. Varric bristled beside her, sensing her hesitation. The great wolf lowered its head, its breath coming in deep, heavy gusts. It had fought many things. It had survived horrors. But even it knew the Warborn was something else. The Warborn tilted its head. Then, in a single movement, it vanished. No sound, no warning. Just gone. Elara barely had time to react before a fist the size of her entire body slammed into the space she had occupied. A shock wave followed, rippling outward in a concussive blast that sent her sprawling. Pain exploded through her ribs as she hit the sand, the world tilting. A second later, she felt something warm trickle down her lips, blood. Varric roared, launching itself at the Warborn. But the executioner was faster. It caught the wolf mid-air, twisting, slamming it into the ground with bone-crushing force. The arena shook with the impact. Varric yelped. The sound cut through Elara like a knife. She tried to rise. The Warborn was already turning, already reaching for her. Its hand closed around her throat, lifting her effortlessly into the air. She kicked, twisted, but the grip was absolute. For the first time, the crowd did not cheer. There was no celebration, no revelry. Only the sick, waiting silence of death. The Warborn leaned in, its face inches from hers, black eyes gleaming like voids. No tricks, little one, it murmured. No whispers, no beasts, just death. The fingers tightened. Elara gasped, darkness creeping at the edges of her vision. Above, the Emperor watched, his golden eyes unreadable. The girl had impressed him, yes. She had done the impossible, yes. But in the end, even monsters could be crushed. The Warborn prepared to finish it. And then, she reached into its mind. Not with whispers, not with control, but with something else. The Warborn stiffened. Its hand trembled. A flicker of something unreadable passed through its eyes. It was not fear. It was not hesitation. It was recognition. Elara's fingers curled around its wrist, her lips parting in a whisper only it could hear. The Warborn hesitated. For the first time in its long, brutal existence. It hesitated. The Warborn's grip trembled. A fraction of hesitation, no more than a flicker of doubt in the deep abyss of its void-black eyes. It was not fear. No, something as ancient and engineered as the Warborn did not know fear. But recognition, that was something else entirely. Elara dangled from its grasp, her small hands clutching at the armored wrist that held her aloft. Blood painted her lips. Her ribs ached with every breath. But she did not look away. Her mind stretched, searching, pressing against the walls of something she had never touched before. Not instinct, not programming. A mind, a presence, buried beneath layers of command and metal. Beneath the weight of 1,000 battles fought in the Emperor's name, something inside the Warborn stirred. Elara did not speak, not with words, but in the void between thought and silence, something passed between them, an understanding, distant but undeniable. The Warborn flinched. It was a subtle thing, almost imperceptible, but it was there, and in that moment, everything changed. From above, the Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. He had ruled too long, had conquered too many, to miss what was unfolding before him. The Warborn should have crushed the girl, shattered her bones, ripped her from existence, as it had done to countless enemies before. And yet it did not. The arena, once filled with frenzied nobles and roaring warriors, was now deathly silent. Even the surviving sentinels stood frozen, their targeting systems recalibrating, unsure of their next move. Karvos' fingers curled into fists. The unknown had no place in his dominion. With a flick of his wrist, he activated the failsafe. A pulse rippled through the arena. The Warborn's body jerked. Its eyes flared a violent red, muscles locking as the Emperor's command forced itself upon the machine of war. Elara felt the shift like a blade to the spine. The recognition was gone, replaced by a raw, overwhelming directive. Kill. The Warborn threw her. She hit the sand hard, skidding across the blood-soaked ground as her breath tore from her lungs. Varric was already moving, intercepting the executioner before it could close the distance again. The great albino wolf launched itself at the Warborn's throat, claws raking across darkened armor. But the creature was ready this time. A single, brutal backhand sent Varric sprawling. The wolf yelped, landing hard against the fractured remains of a fallen sentinel. For the first time, its powerful limbs trembled as it struggled to rise. Elara pushed herself on her elbows, coughing. The Warborn steps thundered toward her, its massive frame casting a shadow over her broken form. No time. No time to think, to breathe, to act. She reached again, forcing her mind through the storm of directives controlling the executioner. Nothing. The failsafe was absolute. The Warborn raised its arm. A blade of pure energy hissed to life, vibrating with the power to cut through anything in its path. The crowd inhaled as one. Elara did not close her eyes. She had faced death too many times. But as the killing stroke descended, something else shifted. Not in the Warborn, not in the wolf, but in the arena itself. A shudder rippled through the ancient structure, deep, unnatural, like the very foundation of the coliseum was waking. A whisper, something older than the Zerkai Empire itself, coiled through the air like a static charge. The Warborn faltered mid-strike. Then, everything exploded. The ground beneath them fractured, a shockwave blasting outward in a perfect sphere of raw, unseen force. The coliseum's walls cracked, sending shards of obsidian and metal raining down into the stands. Nobles screamed, scrambling for cover as the imperial palace itself trembled in the distance. And at the epicenter of it all, Elara stood, or rather, something else did. The air around her hummed, thick with an unseen energy, distorting light, bending the space between her and the Warborn. Her hair lifted as though caught in an invisible current, the blood on her face evaporating into mist. Her body felt light, weightless. The Warborn took a single step back. A subtle thing, a small thing, but the Emperor saw it, and he knew. Something had awakened. The failsafe pulsed again, a desperate override forcing through the Warborn systems. It let out a guttural snarl, shaking its head like a beast caught in a snare. The red glow of its eyes flickered, stabilizing into something purely lethal once more. It lunged. Elara lifted a hand. The Warborn froze. Not physically. Its body still moved, momentum carrying it forward. But its mind, its thoughts, whatever remained of its consciousness, was caught. A deep, unnatural silence filled the arena. Then, slowly and possibly, the Warborn lowered its weapon. The nobles gasped. Some cried out in horror, others in disbelief. The Emperor stilled, his gaze locked on the impossible scene before him. Elara took a step forward. The unseen force around her pulsed, bending the very space between her and the executioner. And then, for the first time, the Warborn knelt. Not by command, not by programming, by will, by choice. Varric, wounded but alive, rose beside her, its glowing amber eyes locked onto the Emperor above. The wolf did not snarl. It did not bare its fangs. It simply waited. The Warborn, executioner of the Empire, bowed its head, and the Emperor knew. He had lost. The silence that followed was deeper than anything the arena had ever known. It was not the silence of shock or fear. It was the silence of something irreversible. A shift in power. A fracture in the unshakable foundation of the Empire. Elara stood at the center of it all. The Warborn, the Emperor's living weapon, remained kneeling before her, its massive form motionless, waiting. Varric stood at her side, its ragged breaths steadying as it watched the nobles above with piercing, knowing eyes. And the Emperor, the untouchable ruler of the Zerkai dominion, did not move. For the first time in his long reign, he hesitated. Then, slowly, his lips curled into something sharp. Calculating. So, he murmured, his voice carrying through the shattered coliseum. This is what you are. His golden gaze locked onto the girl, no longer seeing a discarded human child, no longer seeing prey tossed to the beast for sport. She was something else, something new. The nobles still frozen in the stands began murmuring, their panic shifting into something colder, uncertainty. The might of the Empire had been absolute, its dominion unquestioned. But now, with the Warborn bowed and the child standing untouched, the unspoken question filled the air. Had the balance shifted? Elara felt the weight of their gazes, the sheer force of the moment pressing against her like an ocean tide. But beneath it, beneath the pain, the exhaustion, the blood staining the ground at her feet, she felt clarity. This was not where she died. Not here. Not like this. The Warborn's head tilted slightly, as if listening, as if waiting for an order that had not yet come. She looked down at it, her hands curling into fists. This wasn't just a machine, not just an executioner. There was something buried inside it, something forgotten, and it had chosen. She turned back to the Emperor. His expression remained unreadable, but the slight tension in his jaw told her everything. He was thinking, calculating, rerouting the future in his mind with every breath. He would not allow this to stand. Kill her, he ordered. The words shattered the moment. From the arena walls, the remaining sentinels whirred to life, weapons locking onto her position. A dozen, 2 dozen, more than she could count. Every noble in the stands recoiled, their terror now a living, breathing thing. But Elara did not flinch, and neither did the Warborn. The machine moved, not against her, not against the will that had bound it for so long, but against the Empire. Its arm snapped upward, catching the first plasma shot midair with a speed that defied all sense. The energy burned against its palm, but did not falter. With terrifying grace, it pivoted, launching the molten projectile straight back into the firing squad, obliterating them in a flash of searing heat. The coliseum erupted. Panic consumed the nobles. Some fled. Others reached for weapons that would do nothing against what was now unfolding before them. Varric lunged. The wolf was a streak of white fury, tearing through guards before they could react, its claws finding weaknesses in the armor designed to withstand lesser creatures. Elara moved with them. She did not think, she knew. The power humming beneath her skin had not left, had not faded. It was as much a part of her as the breath in her lungs, the fire in her veins. The Warborn fought at her side, not as a weapon, not as a mindless tool, as an ally. And the Emperor, he watched. His golden eyes never left her, even as the walls of his dominion crumbled. Then, finally he stood. The battle raged around them, but in that moment, there was only the two of them. "You will never be free of this," he said, almost conversationally, as if discussing an unavoidable truth rather than the ruin of his empire. "You think this is victory? It is only the beginning. The moment you stepped onto this path, you ensured one thing." Elara held his gaze, unyielding. "You will be hunted." She already knew that, but she smiled anyway. "Then let them come." The Emperor exhaled slowly. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. A deep, quiet sound, void of rage or desperation. If anything, he almost seemed amused. For the first time in his long rule, he had been outplayed, and he knew it. The Warborn turned to Elara, waiting. Varric snarled, ready. The exit loomed beyond the chaos, beyond the flames and the screaming nobles. The Empire would not fall in a single night, but this was a reckoning, a beginning. Without another word, Elara turned and ran. The Warborn followed, the wolf at her side, and behind them, the Empire burned.